It's a cold grey day in December, and the clocks are striking 19. Winston Smith, in a futile effort to escape the biting wind, nuzzles his chin into the collar of his blue overalls as he slips through the glass doors of Victory Mansions. As usual, the lift was inoperative. He strode up the stairs despite his tiredness, the better to do so under the watch of potential sneaks and the telescreens. Winston, as always, slowed a fraction as he approached his door, his hand limply fiddling with the ancient lock. As he entered, the sound of the large family telescreen greeted him over the feebler voice of his wife, Katharine. "Brother," she greeted as she rose off of one of the two small wooden chairs. Unusually for her, a Victory cigarette propped in place and a bottle of Victory gin that he had been saving for the next day already opened beside it. Bad news coming, he thought, as the door snapped shut behind him, and Katharine moved uncharacteristically to dim the telescreen slightly before she spoke. "Katharine, I did say I may be working late. Is there something the matter?" "We've done it," she said, in a tone that suggested both relief and slight disgust. "Done what?" Winston asked. "We've made a baby." "Welcome, comrades. So today I thought it might be fun to do a semi-fan fiction / speculative talk on what I think would happen if Winston and Katharine, Winston's estranged wife-in-the-law, succeeded in having a child. How would this change the story? What events would be different? And would Winston survive in this scenario? So if this all sounds like your sort of thing, let's continue. So in the one and only Orwell law, we know that Winston's 15-month marriage, despite the efforts of husband and wife, produced no children. This period of Winston's life is an embarrassing and miserable one. For a start, the two seem polar opposites in intellect and temperament. It's implied that even back then, Winston was a thought criminal, or at least not particularly good-thinking. Katharine, however, is a model good thinker, her thoughts and words mirroring party ideology and slogans. Katharine's orthodoxy even tarnishes the marriage itself, with Katharine's attitude to sex wholly influenced by it, and causing the experience to be both awkward and chore-like, Winston recalling it as a frigid little ceremony. So now we move on about a year. Winston struggled up the stairs of Victory Mansions. Entering the apartment, he found Katharine bent over the grimy kitchen sink, preparing cabbages. The smell, always prevalent, struck him the stronger as he approached her. Her eyes flitted towards his from the telescreen, which at present was talking about the exploits of some famous child heroes. "How is he?" Winston asked, allowing his briefcase to slip to the floor. "Quiet today," she answered a little shortly. "You will keep an ear open in case of..." "Of course." "Thank you, brother." She dried her hands with a rag before taking a chair near the stove of boiling cabbage as the telescreen continued babbling out statistics on the traitors brought to justice through the efforts of the spies. It was a Tuesday, Winston's agreed time to take primary duties that night. The first few months had wearied him to the bones. Katharine had had a difficult pregnancy, and the birth had left her temporarily bedridden if content. All he had heard her mumble afterwards intermittently was, "We did it, brother. We did it. Our duty to the party." His baby boy, named Jack after a famous war hero from the African front, was awake in his crib and fast outgrowing his party-issue singlet. Winston's greatest pleasure at present was his few precious minutes after work in which he had had full time with his son. As Winston's face appeared over Jack, their eyes met, and the little cheeky grin played on his lips. Having Jack also had other advantages too, other than this simple pleasure and the secret longing he had to hold and simply sit with the boy. Katharine now lost all interest in the weekly performance that she had insisted upon. Since the doctors bluntly said that she could have no more children, this went without saying anyway, and always the perfect party drudge, Katharine herself had suggested this. Jack let out a mute wail after a minute or so, and Winston took him into his arms gently. Recently this time too offered a good stretch to consider himself. Lately he had been so busy as to have little time to think about anything, let alone his own secret beliefs and emotions. Even within the few cubic centimetres of his skull that were still his, Jack, both his love for him and his terrifying potential, dominated his waking thoughts. Folly, folly, Winston thought, as he felt the warmth of Jack's body on his chest. Once the act had passed, it was foregone. Inevitable he would be caught, he considered, for the 10,000th time. He was a thought criminal. At present, his son was not. Jack was nothing, a blank slate soon to be filled with the lies and hatreds of the party. This thought, above all, clawed at Winston's heart. Another dark thought, then, flashed across his mind as the relentless monologue of the telescreen droned on through to the room. Yet before it fully struck, Winston felt a small hand on his face, then a spasm of joy that cut through the gloom. The party, powerful as it was, could not yet deny this, he thought, even if only for a few minutes out of a day, a few hours in a lifetime. It was undeniable that they were still human. The secret love he had was inviolable, if still hidden deep within him. He clutched desperately at the thought as Katharine's whining voice broke the spell to call him to dinner. So a bit of a long extract, but I think you get the idea. I believe that even Winston, earlier on anyway, would have a guarded love for his child. I think this is one of the more evil intentions of the party, to use the natural bond between parent and child and eventually warp it to create yet another layer of control. In these very early days of a child's life, I suspect the infant would have the most alone time with the parents, allowing for the natural bonds to develop. Even Winston, guarded as he might have been, would have felt these emotions and fallen into this trap. Indeed, in the extract, we see he even knows and somewhat foresees what the party will do. We know from canon too that Winston values emotions highly. It's what separates party comrades from the proles and the past. He aches with guilt at not being able to love his mother back, for example, when recalling their last months together. He admires and envies the proles for their family loyalties and love, despite also despising them in other ways. Finally, the whole final conflict in canon at the novel's conclusion hinges on Winston's love for Julia. Since it's the final obstacle to his true submission to the party, we can safely say, I believe, that his natural love for his son would be even more powerful and firmly trap him within the parent-spy dynamic moving on. So that was part 1 of this speculative type video. A little different, but hopefully fun. Next time the scenario broadens and we see some pretty huge changes come about. Until then though, remember, if you can feel that staying human is worthwhile, even when it can't have any result whatever, you've beaten them.